Ever wonder why your dad's old Coleman lantern still works after 40 years, while your headlamp died in one summer? Camping gear used to last decades. Now it barely survives 5 seasons before poles snap or an app stops updating. If you're about to spend $300 to $1,500 on gear this weekend, there's a chance you're overpaying for something worse than cheaper alternatives. I'll show you what changed and the one buying rule that saves you thousands. Back in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, camping gear was built to survive. Companies like Kelty, Svea, Coleman, and Camp Trails were locked into a simple philosophy: sell someone one good setup and let it earn a reputation over decades. The result was aluminum frame packs that could take a beating. White gas stoves you could strip down with a pocket knife, canvas tents heavy enough to double as a tarp for a barn roof, and sleeping bags stitched by people who expected the product to outlive the receipt. These things were repairable. If a stove valve clogged, you cleaned it yourself with the tool that came in the box. If a pack strap tore, a shoe repair shop fixed it in an afternoon. If a zipper failed, a local outfitter had the part in a drawer, not on back order from a factory overseas. People bought one good setup and used it for decades, and the used gear market reflected that. A 20-year-old Kelty pack in decent shape still sells today for more than plenty of brand new budget packs, because buyers know exactly what they're getting. Reputation was the entire business model. A company that built something fragile didn't get a second sale. It got a bad word passed around every outfitter counter in the region. Then, starting in the late 1990s and accelerating hard through the 2000s, everything changed. Manufacturing moved to contract factories overseas. Private equity firms and multinational conglomerates started buying up legendary outdoor brands, not because they loved the trail, but because they loved the margins. And a new wave of smart and app-connected features gave manufacturers the perfect excuse to make your gear functionally obsolete every few years. Here's what actually happened inside the industry, and it's worse than most people think. Secret number 1, the brand on the tag is not who built the product. Iconic outdoor names have been passed around like trading cards between corporate owners for 2 decades. Kelty has changed hands multiple times, moving through private equity ownership before landing inside Excel Outdoors, a roll-up company that also owns Slumberjack and Wenzel. Marmot and Ex Officio were folded into Newell Brands, the same conglomerate behind Rubbermaid and Sharpie, before being sold off again in 2023 as the whole outdoor division was deemed underperforming. Coleman itself sits inside Newell too, alongside dozens of unrelated consumer brands, managed by executives whose background is in household plastics, not backcountry engineering. Newell's entire outdoor and recreation segment has posted repeated year-over-year revenue declines through the early 2020s, and when a division underperforms inside a conglomerate that also sells kitchenware and office supplies, the fix is rarely better engineering. It's tighter cost targets on the next production run. Every time a brand changes hands, engineering teams get cut, factories get switched, and cost targets get tightened. The tent you buy today carrying a name your father trusted is not built by the same people in the same factory with the same standards as the one he owned. The logo on the stuff sack is the same. The company behind it is not. Secret number 2, planned obsolescence has gone digital, and it's spreading into gear that never used to need a battery at all. Unlike a mechanical compass or a canvas tent that just does its one job forever, a lot of modern gear is now wrapped in apps, firmware, and companion software, and software has an expiration date. Handheld GPS units are the clearest example. A device you paid $400 for depends on a manufacturer's servers to keep map data current and Bluetooth pairing functional. When that manufacturer discontinues support, often within just 3 or 4 years, the physical unit still works perfectly, but the software layer goes dark, and features silently stop functioning. Headlamps and lanterns have followed the same path with sealed, rechargeable batteries that can't be swapped, following the exact playbook phone makers pioneered. After roughly 300 to 500 charge cycles, the battery holds a fraction of its original capacity, and there is no fix, no replacement cell, nothing. The hardware didn't fail. The company simply designed it to stop being useful on a schedule. This is the reality of connected gear. The object in your hands works fine, but the company holding the other end of the software can quietly let it die and shrug. Secret number 3. Technical sounding marketing is a billion-dollar business, and most of it is not engineering. It's vocabulary. Proprietary fabric names, dozens of them, trademarked and marketed as breakthrough technology that independent lab teardowns repeatedly show are nearly identical polyester or nylon weaves with marginal weight differences between brands. Camping carabiners stamped with impressive-looking kilonewton numbers, sold on the same pegboard as actual climbing-rated hardware, manufactured with 0 third-party safety certification behind those numbers. Waterproof phone cases claiming lab-tested ratings that hold up perfectly in a sealed testing chamber and fail within weeks of real trail dust and gasket wear. Independent gear testers who've run comparative material analysis have shown again and again that a lot of what separates a $220 jacket from a $90 jacket with nearly identical fabric specifications is the name printed on the chest, not the performance in the field. Down Fill Power tells the same story. Fill Power used to be verified by independent labs using a consistent standard. Now most brands self-report the number using a looser international method, and a jacket marketed as 800 fill from one company can trap less warmth than a 600 fill jacket from another, because the number was never designed to help you compare. It was designed to win an argument on a hang tag. The industry keeps selling the vocabulary because once you've committed emotionally to a premium brand, spending more on the next technical upgrade feels like the logical next step. It isn't. It's the sunk cost fallacy with a trademarked fabric name attached. The real tragedy is that every dollar spent chasing a marketing term is a dollar that didn't go toward the 2 things that actually determine whether your gear survives: honest material thickness and a design that can actually be repaired. Before I show you what's actually worth buying, if this is opening your eyes a little, go ahead and subscribe so more of these breakdowns reach you, and drop a comment telling me the oldest piece of gear you still use. I'd bet a good number of you will name something from the 80s or 90s that still works perfectly. So if most of the industry is selling you overpriced, over-featured, under-engineered gear wrapped in legacy brand names, what should you actually buy? Here's what independent testers and repair-focused outdoors people recommend broken down by category. Let's start with shelter, your tent. This is where the biggest quiet downgrade has happened, and almost nobody at the big outdoor retailers wants to talk about it because tent fabric denier has been dropping for over a decade while the 3-season label stayed exactly the same. A tent rated 3-season today can use fabric barely tougher than a rain poncho. At the budget end, the Kelty Late Start 2 runs around $130, and because it's a simple design without unnecessary vestibule gimmicks, it uses a fabric weight that actually holds up to abrasion over repeated trips. In the mid-range, at around $280, the REI Co-op Half Dome SL uses a higher denier floor fabric and a pole architecture that's been essentially unchanged for years because it doesn't need fixing, which is exactly the point. And at the top, for anyone serious about longevity, Hilleberg tents, built in Sweden, with the same silicone-coated fabric and aluminum pole philosophy the company has used since the 1970s, run $600 to $900, but owners routinely report them lasting 15 to 20 years of hard use. That's not a luxury markup. That's the actual cost of a tent built the way tents used to be built by default. Next, the stove, because this is where repairability separates functional gear from disposable gear almost instantly. Modern canister stoves are sealed units built around proprietary valve systems. And when the igniter fails, there is no repair kit, no disassembly, nothing to open. A better default is a stove you can actually service in the field. The Soto Windmaster, around $65, uses a simple, fully exposed burner design with no sealed electronics to fail, and the piezo igniter is a separate replaceable part rather than molded into the body. If you want something built on the old philosophy entirely, the MSR Whisperlight International, around $130, is essentially a modern continuation of the white gas stoves from the 1970s, field maintainable with a repair kit that fits in your palm, and it's been in continuous production, barely changed since 1984. That's not an accident. That's a company that figured out the original design didn't need fixing. Sleeping bags deserve their own mention because this is the category where a downgraded spec is hardest to catch at the point of sale. Since fill power numbers are largely self-reported, the only real way to judge a bag honestly is by checking whether the manufacturer publishes results from an independent testing standard rather than their own in-house number. At the budget end, the Kelty Cosmic 20, around $100, uses 600 fill down but tests it against the recognized international standard. So the number on the tag actually means something. In the mid-range, around $200, the Feathered Friends Egret uses 800 fill down with a genuinely tested rating and a shell fabric substantial enough to survive years of stuff sack compression without the loft collapsing permanently. And for anyone who wants a bag built the old way entirely, Western mountaineering bags, running $350 to $500, are still hand-assembled in California using continuous baffle construction, and owners routinely report them holding their loft after decades of use. Now, packs, because this is where cheap faux-am quietly ruins gear that looks perfectly fine on the shelf. Hip belts and back panels used to use dense structural foam that held its shape for a decade of loaded miles. Softer, lighter foam feels great during a 5-minute fitting in a store and compresses permanently within 2 seasons of real weight on your hips, which is exactly why a pack that felt perfect on day 1 can leave your hips aching by year 2, even though nothing on the outside looks any different. At the budget level, the Osprey Rook 65, around $200, still uses a firmer foam density in the hip belt than most competitors at that price. Osprey also backs nearly every pack with an actual lifetime repair guarantee that gets honored in practice, not just printed on a tag. Step up to around $340, and the Gregory Baltoro uses a suspension system with replaceable, field-serviceable components rather than one sealed foam and frame unit, meaning a worn hip belt pad can actually be swapped instead of forcing you to replace the entire pack. That single design choice, replaceable components instead of a sealed assembly, is the difference between a pack that lasts 5 years and one that lasts 20. And finally, the piece of gear people underestimate the most, your knife or multi-tool, because steel quality is the most quietly downgraded spec in the entire industry. Classic multi-tools use steel that held an edge and resisted corrosion for decades of hard use. And to hit lower price points, many mainstream brands have shifted to softer alloys while keeping the same branding and the same shape. A Leatherman Wave Plus, around $110, still uses 154 cm steel, a genuinely hard, corrosion-resistant alloy, And Leatherman backs it with a 25-year warranty that is actually honored, including sharpening services. Compare that to several budget tactical multi-tools using unspecified stainless blends that dull within a season and pit with rust the first time they get near salt air, often selling for nearly the same price because the brand spent its money on packaging instead of metallurgy. Here's the rule I want you to remember. Check repairability first, buy features second. Before you buy anything, ask whether a worn part can actually be replaced or whether the whole product gets thrown away the moment one component fails. If a company can't tell you what steel is in their knife, what denier is in their tent floor, what fill power standard their sleeping bag was tested against, or whether their headlamp battery can be swapped, that silence is the answer. A 5-second question at the store counter tells you more than any spec sheet on the box. Smart buyers right now are building kits around field serviceable gear. A $130 tent with an honest denier rating, a $65 to $130 stove you can actually take apart, a sleeping bag tested against a real standard instead of a marketing number, a pack with replaceable suspension components, and a multi-tool with a warranty that's actually worth the paper it's printed on. Spending $800 once on gear built this way beats spending $2,000 over a decade chasing the next lightweight, app-connected sealed unit upgrade. The bottom line. The outdoor gear industry is designed to make you replace things you shouldn't have to replace. Legacy brands are being hollowed out by conglomerates that have never set foot on a trail. Software-dependent products can be abandoned by a company at any time, with zero warning and zero recourse, and a meaningful chunk of the market runs on trademarked vocabulary, self-reported numbers, brand loyalty, and the fear that you're missing some breakthrough. You're not missing anything. The gear to build an excellent field repairable camping kit for under $1,000 exists right now, sold by companies that never stopped honoring the old philosophy. The teardown tests prove it. The warranty track records prove it. The used gear market, full of 30-year-old packs still doing their job, proves it. The only people who don't want you to know this are the ones selling you a $200 carabiner with a fake safety rating. Check repairability first. Buy the boring brand with the honest spec sheet, not the one with the app. That's it. If this saved you from an expensive mistake, subscribe. More videos like this are coming. How long did your last tent or backpack actually last you? Write it in the comments and leave a like. See you next time.